Delightful. Alrighty. Well, at least I got off of that damn horrific cursed save icon, so that's... Well, actually, come to think of it, considering the absolute disgust I was feeling going through whatever the hell Hozuki, the crazy nurse lady who turns out that, oh, great, she's a cult nut, and she's also responsible for certain murders that took place. Yeah, that's pleasant. That's definitely a sort of a pleasant sort of thing. And the fact that she's kind of getting off to it, yeah, that's nice. Girl that I thought was cute with glasses? No. Why? Why? No, I'm probably gonna get ready. I'm about to get cursed with another unholy image. Let me see. Or not? Maybe I'll be spared. Midnight fell on A.H. Tokyo General Hospital, the place of Hazuki Shino's work. Within one of its operating rooms, the nurse stood nearly still. On the bed lay her psychiatrist colleague, Takashina Fumio. Of course, she also killed him. He was tied to the bed, but this was not the only thing that had been done to him. His cranium had been opened, and his brain was exposed. His skull had been cut cleanly, the line being right above the eyes. Like, absolutely nutty. Like, the most absolutely batshit insane of anybody that is trapped in a cult. The ones that really, really buy into it and refuse to just, like, see, well, I don't know, logic. Ugh. He's still... The fact that he is still conscious despite the fact that his skull is open. Takashino was conscious. Due to the effects of the anesthesia, he did not feel any pain from the cut. The other dread he felt kept his eyes open wide, and his body was sweating greatly. Are we actually... Am I... Oh, dear. Yeah, and she's also getting off to this too, apparently. Ignoring Takashina's pleas for his life, Hazuki retrieved a shiny silver utensil from the pocket of her white scrubs. I'm going to assume that is a... Wait a minute. A shiny silver utensil. So, this could go one of two directions. It could potentially be a scalpel, as in she's going to try to cut something out of his brain. Or it's going to go into one of the reasons why I don't like the Danganronpa 3 anime. A utensil that could not be referred to as a traditional surgical tool. Oh, don't. Oh, God, no, it's worse. Oh, no, it's worse. Oh, no, it is infinitely worse. It was a spoon. An all too ordinary piece of tableware. We're not gonna hear all of his screams of pain and torment, are we? Hazuki reveled in ecstasy. As if enjoying a meal of curry and rice, she took a spoonful of Takashina's brain. She then took the spoon and violently cast the contents onto a stainless steel tray. The pink brain tissue was pulped into a jelly-esque substance. Hazuki thrusted the spoon inside the brain once again. This time, however, she accumulated even more matter than she had the first time as she scraped away the brain tissue. Takashina's own brain was getting removed from his body, yet he felt no pain, nor did he lose consciousness. As well as this, the anesthesia had robbed him of any freedom of movement whatsoever. All the man could do was tremble in fear. Okay, so there's probably some science majors that are actually... Or there's somebody that's more knowledgeable about biology and science stuff like that, how much can a person fucking survive while their brain is being like taken out like that? Like, I know that for some reason, whenever people back in the old days, whenever they used to do frontal lobe lobotomies, there were still some people that could live, but they were basically walking vegetables. Like, in this, like, let's take fiction away from this scenario here. What are the, like, what is the science? How is it possible for somebody to still be alive while they're getting parts of their brain scooped out like this? I don't know. That's why I'm asking this question, because it probably sounds, this kind of reminds me of that one case about this guy that had oh god, what was it? He suffered a severe cranial head injury that involved something like piercing his brain, yet somehow he was able to still live a normal life. I'm gonna have to look this up later, because I'm kind of going off of my memory. I might be confusing two different cases, because I might have been confused. Oh yeah, I think I'm confusing it with the case where that guy suffered a severe brain injury, like a portion of his brain got hit or like taken out, and while he was still able to live normally, his personality had completely shifted. Yeah, I might be confusing two different cases here. Anyway, let's get back to the torture. Ew.
これがあなたの記憶なんですね。
Oh. Hazuki Shino looked up at the projection in shock. On the Scramble Crossing's 4 massive jumbotrons, her very own memories were being shown. She couldn't even understand how it was being done. Perhaps it was Nishijo Takumi's power as a gigalomaniac.
あなたの記憶です。
With his head hung low and D-sword in hand, Nishijo Takumi murmured those words. The riot came to a halt. Silence was now the ruling entity. The thousands of people who had been assailing each other until only a moment ago were now looking up toward the screens. Some went pale, some averted their eyes. Some felt such horror it compelled them to vomit. The mass media were starting to record Hazuki with their cameras. Countless blinding flashes ensued.
あなたがニュージェネ事件の真犯人だったんだ。
私の記憶を映像に投影したんですね。
You projected my memories and you just take that so casually.
もう言い逃れはできませんよ。胎児とあなたの DNA を鑑定すればわかることです。
Oh, that's right, because it was her fetus. Ooh. Or no, I'm sorry. I messed that up. The fetus came from her. Oh. But wait a minute. Wouldn't that also reveal who the father was?
どうしてあんなことを。ねえ、クリム。
ナイトハルト。
She even knows my hero. Oh boy.
すべては教祖様のお言葉なんですよ。
The glorious founder ordered it so. You are literally, yep. You have, as a cult follower, you lack agency. Or you gave up your agency. That way you don't have to think. All you have to do is follow the person who you threw your entire life and sanity away for. Hazuki plunged her hand into the bag resting over her shoulder. From it, she retrieved both a Noah 2 terminal port and a scalpel. She gripped the scalpel and placed it right against her throat. Due to the nature of her position as a nurse, she knew the location of the carotid artery all too well. Oh, she's gonna take herself out. Hazuki smiled at Nishijo Takumi. It was a kind smile, much like the one she would oft show her patients.
信仰の救いあれ。
As her own blood gushed forth from her neck, Her entire body was painted a bright crimson.
Espada.
救世主
Don't call me a messiah, please. I didn't know who, but someone had mumbled those words. After seeing the sheer number of gazes piercing through me, I realized that those words were also directed at me. In front of a countless number of people, Hazuki Shino had committed suicide via slitting her throat. Although calling it a martyrdom might have been more accurate, the choking smell of blood filled the air. The riot had now entirely stopped. Hazuki Shino's memories of the crime she had committed, which I had projected directly onto the Jumbotrons, ended up being the perfect thing to make the excited parts of the mob quiet down. The shocking nature of what had been displayed left everyone at a loss for words. Even now, Hazuki Shino's corpse was still bleeding. A number of people then walked up to it and began kicking it. It was the corpse of an atrocious murderer, so there were no respects to be paid here. Next, they might even publicly behead her like it was the Middle Ages. What difference was there between her and the ones kicking her corpse? By their very nature, humans were disgusting, horrible creatures. Myself included. The media, like hyenas, were accumulating around anything that could act as a scoop. Roughly half of them had gathered around Hazuki Shino's corpse, and the other half were surrounding me.
お見事でした。
今のは超能力ですか？やはりエスパーだったんですね。すごいです。
And like that, public opinion has shifted.
今日のこの集まりは初めから真犯人をおびき寄せるためのものだったの？
あなたの超能力は何歳頃に現れたものなんですか？
I'm already feeling fucking stifled, or not the word. God, I'm feeling claustrophobic already, and I'm not even there.
子供の頃のあだ名は振動とか呼ばれたことある？
Nickname? Nickname? Nickname?
今後警察の捜査に協力する予定は？
うちの局の番組に出てくれないかな？
He's got something more important to take care of right now. One after the other, endless words of praise were thrown my way.
西条、よくやったぞ！お前すげえよ！
Huh? One after the other, endless words of affection were thrown my way. I felt hollow hearing those voices. A fabricated image formed by public opinion and a delusionary being. They weren't all too different, were they? It was all coming back. The energy they'd all shown when they'd seen me up on top of O-Front. Unable to take it anymore, I screamed. My thoughts exactly. Tears started flowing. I felt completely miserable. I felt completely ridiculous. I didn't have it in me to keep going without crying. I wasn't a hero. Okay, that's being brutally honest.
18歳未満だけどヘロゲして燃えって言ってる男だ。頭の中じゃ街を歩く女どもを裸にひむいてエロい妄想してる。それが僕だ。
Christ! Tears and mucus smeared down my face. I forgot I was being broadcasted live across the entire country. It didn't even occur to me that I was shaming myself yet again. I couldn't help it. I was physically incapable of reading the room.
そうだよ。これでも僕は英雄かよ。違う。僕は英雄なんかじゃない。 所詮妄想の存在で希望だぜ。一人じゃ何もできないヘタレだ。
The voices around me went quiet. The onlookers sank into silence. The people from the media looked at me dubiously. Within the heart of Shibuya, in the middle of the humongous scramble crossing, only my voice was echoing.
それが僕だ。お前らに他人に僕っていう人間を決めさせない。僕の本質は僕が決める。
You know what? That's a good line. I won't let other people like you decide who I am. I'll decide what I really am.
僕はお前らのおもちゃじゃない。見せ物なんかにはならない。僕にはやるべきことがあるんだ。僕はお前たちなんかのために行動しない。
Hell yeah, we have shit to do. Fuck all this. Rimi's smile appeared in my mind.
僕はただ
For the sake of those I cared about, I was here to fight. Then disappear. But before I could voice that, I suddenly noticed that the night sky reflected in the corner of my eye was turning pure white. Oh no, not again! It wasn't a cloud, nor was it snow falling a little too early in the year. By the time I realized it was the same phenomenon from back when the earthquake had hit, it was already too late.
サードメルト予定より早い。
The third melt. The first thing I felt was the very earth itself beginning to rumble. The ground began to shake. The white in the sky was spreading farther and farther. The very next moment, I was struck with a violent ringing in my ears. It was such an intensely shrill, resonant sound, my head felt like it was about to burst open. Everyone else around me was covering their ears too. And then... the world was dyed completely white. Chapter 9, Gigalomaniac. Okay, so if I went a little bit slightly further, I would have completed Chapter 9. Okay. I was busy reading the achievement that I didn't read the title of the chapter was. I was standing atop a body of water. Incredibly clear, transparent water. It was shallow, reaching only my ankles, but it was not cold. Wait, whose perspective are we in? Intermittently, the waves whispered in my ears. I was tightly grasping the handles of a wheelchair. Shogun. No. The real Nishijo Takumi was right before me, his head adorned with his knitted cap. He sat ever so slightly hunched forward in his wheelchair. There wasn't a single thing surrounding us. Neither shells buried in the sand, nor seabirds elegantly soaring through the sky. Nothing so expressly emulative of the sea could be seen. There were no signs of life, only the blue sea and the crystal clear sky. The terrain was completely flat all around me, with the horizon stretching as far as the eye could see. This place was not the real world. Together with the sound of breaking news, I heard Shogun's voice. Breaking waves. From where I was standing, I couldn't see his expression. The tone of his voice didn't carry any particular feeling of lamentation. In reality, his words felt like they were just simply casual passing remarks. Small, wrinkled, and withered away. All of his hair had fallen out. An illness from within. At the age of 10, when your physical development halted? Wait, a rapid aging illness? Was he aging prematurely? that illness was supposed to be rare, affecting only 1 out of every 8 million people. Wait a minute, there's an actual illness like this? Hold the phone. Okay, so I looked it up. There's apparently like 2 versions, but it looks like what Takumi got was probably adult progeria or Werner syndrome. Okay, so apparently that is an actual thing. Although the more deadly one is the one that hits them whenever a child is like 1 or 2, and it's pretty much fatal. But it looks like he got the late affecting one.
10歳って
It started when you were 10. A gruesome scene etched into my memories began to rise to the surface.
あのバス事故の3ヶ月ぐらい前だよ。僕が発症したの。
3 months before that bus accident.
バス事故は君がそうかもしれない。あの時はまだ自分の力についてほとんど自覚はなかったけど。
And that's another thing, like, he doesn't know if his delusion caused the accident from that bus or not. Which, I'm pretty sure that would have caused even more mental strain on a kid if they, you know, went from the line of thinking like, wait, did I predict that? To, oh my god, did I cause that?
病が発症するよりずっと前。それこそ物心ついた時から僕はギガロマニアックスとしての力を使うことができた。
For as long as I could remember before the onset of the illness, he was able to use those powers.
それが普通のことだと思ってたよ。
Well, yeah, you were a kid. That sort of thing, like, you know, when you're still in that developing age, it's kind of hard to tell what's real and what's fiction. I mean, whenever I was a kid, this is probably embarrassing to admit, but whenever I was young, I used to believe that if I actually trained hard enough, I could literally become a Super Saiyan. And there would be times where, like, as a little kid, I'm, like, trying to focus my energy, focus my ki, unleash that rage. And then my mom came out like, why's your face all red? And I'm like, I'm trying to become a Super Saiyan. And then my mom had to bring the hammer of reality down upon me just to kind of make me stop myself from hurting myself.
意識的にしろ、無意識的にしろ、僕はこれまで何度も力を使ってきた。だから、僕の存在としての矛盾が大きくなりすぎちゃったんだ。
The contradictions in my existence grew too large.
青い背中から聞いてるだろ。
Mm-hmm.
粒子とともに追生成される反粒子はディソードにストックされていくんだ。反粒子は数学的に言えば過去へ向かうものだから。ストックすればするほどギガロマニアックスには現在の状態とのズレが発生し、
The larger a gigalomaniac's gap from their present state. The funny thing is, now with this information and the fact that we now know the truth about Takumi's existence, this really puts into perspective a lot of the stuff that Senna was talking about. Ergo this as an example.
やがてその矛盾により存在としての自己崩壊へ至る。
As he spoke, Shogun didn't move an inch in his wheelchair. What was he looking at? Could he even see at all?
力を使えば使うほどこの病は進行しちゃうんだ。ギガロマニアックスの力で治せばいいじゃないか。
I love this weird audio effect that's going on with Takumi's voice, though.
力を使えば病は進行する。端的に言えば力を使ってもプラスマイナスゼロっていうことさ。何も変わらない。どうして僕みたいな肝オタのヘタレ野郎を作ったの？もっと強くて行動的でかっこいいイケメンにすればよかったのに。人を一人、しかも ギガルマニアックスの力を使える人間を生み出すのは簡単なことじゃなかった。
Well, I mean, yeah, you're literally crafting an entire existence. It's not the same as like a woman giving birth to or developing a child in her belly. It is two completely different things. One is a blank slate, and the other you have to literally build not only a history, but a personality, memories, and make them functional. You basically have to speedrun creating a person.
君を生み出したんですね。1年近く昏睡しちゃったくらいだ。
Holy sh... A coma for a year?
僕は未完成だったってわけ。だからこそ君はとても人間らしい。
Yeah, I guess that's one way of looking at it.
フォローしなくてもいい。本心だよ。
I click my tongue. I really did hate this guy.
リミにはいつも力を使うなって怒られたよ。彼女は君を助けたいんでしょう。でも僕はリミの忠告に従うわけにはいかない。今の危機的状況は僕の IR2 がきっかけなんだから。
That formula. That damn cursed formula. IR2. That strange scribble on the back of my essay.
IR2 はある科学者の目に留まり、やがてのぞみテクノロジー社によって研究が始められた。
Yeah, like, of course. There's another novel I could bring a comparison to, but I think considering, the developers of this also developed said story.
それがプロジェクトノア。言ってみれば人工的にギガロマニアックスの能力を発生させる装置。
A device that artificially generates the abilities of a gigalomaniac.
僕が計画に気づくことができたのはリミと出会ったからなんだ。彼女がひどい拷問を受けていたのはそのプロジェクトの一環だった。ノアのシステムを効率化するために必要だったのがコード3。ギガロマニアックスが力を使う過程で放出する特殊なノウハウを。
And they tortured her for her codes.
それを手に入れるためにのぞみの社長ノロセはリミに過酷な拷問を加えた。強烈な負の感情を抱くときギガロマニアックスは力に覚醒し理想度を獲得するからね。
Once again, I remembered Senna's words.
バイオリズムの上昇によって中脳変影系ニューロンのドーパミンが過剰分泌されたとき、理想度は現れる。
Excessive dopamine secretions.
それは危機的な状況や興奮、悲しみ、憎しみ、笑いなど人それぞれだ。ドーパミン分泌量が多ければ、それだけ観測しやすくなる。
君が僕にちょっかいをかけてきたのもそのため。君を覚醒させるためにだ。
To forcefully awaken him. Damn. They needed Takumi to awaken to the power of a gigalomaniac just so they could probably stop Norose. Holy shit. But that torture, oh my god. Rimi and I weren't the only ones. There were others who had undergone severe mental or physical torture because of Project Noah. Hayase, Sana, Kozupi, and even Nanami. Cruel trials had been laid out for all of them, all so they could become gigalomaniacs.
IR2 から生み出されたノア2は僕が自分の手で止めなくちゃならない。でも僕はこんな体だ。満足に動くこともできない。
Which is why you created me.
それに僕のコードサンプルを欲しがる望みから狙われるようにもなっちゃう。
That was to say nothing of how he was hospitalized at AH Tokyo General Hospital, a place which had hidden ties to the Nozomi group.
だから身を隠さなくちゃいけなかった。
That's why you created the room hidden behind the black wall.
幻の病室のアミーちゃんか。
Yeah, the thing that old guy. Yeah.
あそこに入ってこられたのはリミだけだったよ。僕は身動きが取れなくなって、それで僕を作ったのか。
I see. Shogun weakly nodded.
リミには君を消すように何度も言われたんだ。命を削る行為だからやめろって。でも僕に残された命は長くない。力を使わなくたってあまり差はないんだよね。
Yeah. From the way it sounds, it's like no matter what, you're going to die soon, whether you use your powers or not. It's a matter of whether you're going to speed it up or not. His voice was deeply serene. He had a certain sense of wiseness to him. Perhaps it was one you can only get from living out your days under a death sentence.
それに君が覚醒して力を使えるようになれば僕の命は持たないだろうか。
Wait, what? Wait, once I awakened, your life could no longer be maintained. Why?
僕と君は一心同体っていうこと。そうだね。
Oh. Oh, we literally became one person?
でも一つだけ約束。もう妄想はしない。
Oh. Damn, it's a good thing I was avoiding using any delusions. I see. It had to reach the point where Takumi awakened his D-sword. And thus, Shogun, well, died, but his soul rejoined with the facsimile of himself that he created.
タクの妄想力はとっても強いから。
Damn.
妄想をすればするほど本物のあなたの命が削られていっちゃうんだ。
If I tried to keep my promise to Rimi, I couldn't go help her. Even if I could, I wouldn't be able to do a thing. It wouldn't matter what I tried. They'd turn the tables on me in an instant. Oh. Okay, so you really don't have much time left. Okay. I was stunned. I hadn't expected him to have so little time left. Yeah, what happens to him?
リアルブートされたことによって現実の人間になった。
Oh, applying the logic of the D sword. Because I'm real booted, that makes me real.
生まれ方は特殊かもしれないけど君は人間だよ。
I'm a real human being.
僕が消えれば君は助かるよ。無駄だよ。せいぜい寿命が数日から数週間伸びるぐらいじゃないかな。
Oof, that's not enough time.
でもそんな愚かな選択肢を選ぶのはやめるんだ。君にはノア2を破壊してほしい。そのために力を使うことを遠慮しないでほしい。言われなくても分かってる。君に遠慮するほど僕はお人よしじゃない。
I'm not so charitable as to hold back for your sake. Shogun's shoulders shook faintly as he laughed. Making him laugh was the last thing I'd meant to do, so that annoyed me.
君が目覚めてくれてよかった。勝手な話で迷惑かもしれないけど、あと君に託す。
Suddenly, the feeling of the wheelchair's handles disappeared. Before I knew it, the wheelchair he was sitting in began to leave me behind. As it moved, it almost seemed to glide across the surface of the water. Its two wheels cut into the water, making waves as they turned. I had no intention of following him. Instead, I absently watched him go.
僕の役目は終わった。
Thanks, Takumi.
勝手だね。僕に丸投げ。少し疲れちゃった。眠らせてよ。
Oh, I'm just a little oh, don't say that. He turned to me from his wheelchair. As usual, I couldn't read his expression, but his voice showed an intense urgency.
時間がない。急いで。ノロセはノア2を本格的に稼働させた。こうなったらノア2を直接破壊するしかないんだ。
Right.
頼んだよ。
And then, as if embraced by a cloud of mist, he began to disappear. The very colors of this mental world slowly began to fade.
君に頼まれる筋合いなんてない。僕自身が決めたことをやるだけ。
The sound of the waves became more distant. Just like Remy had once, I burned this perfect crystal clear sky into my memories. And then I gently closed my eyes. Whoa! A reporter on the radio was reading the news with a grave tone.
現在までに確認された死傷者の数は233人ですが、この数は最終的に3万人を超えるとみられ、気象庁の発表によりますと、今回の地震の規模は震度7、マグニチュードは 7.8 と関東大震災に匹敵する規模です。
Jesus. 30,000.
渋谷では建物の一部が倒壊し、大規模な陥没も発生している模様です。
A large-scale cave-in?
首都高渋谷線が高架の倒壊により全線通行止め。公共交通機関では山手線など全線が運転を見合わせております。
All lines. Wow. Static mixed in with the news until eventually the reporter spoke no longer.
ダメだわ。また聞こえなくなった。
Oh shit! Momose! Momose shook and hit the old radio with her hand, but upon realizing she was getting nowhere, she let out a heavy sigh.
古いから使い物にならないわね。
Yo! Forcing a smile, she looked to the side. She could see the figures of Kishimoto Ayase and Kusanoki Yua walking along, expressions of fatigue coloring their faces. Also, a new portrait for Yua. Both of their uniforms were covered in soot, making it clear how laborious the trek here had been. And yet the great swords they were holding, their D-swords, did not have a speck of dust on them. Instead, they shone with an unclouded, brutal radiance. After the earthquake, Yua and Ayase had walked back to Shibuya from Yoyogi, went straight to the Frisia office, then joined up with Momose. Waiting for the missing Bond to return, the three had stayed near the office throughout the night. Oh. Damn it. Even though the earthquake had put the building on the verge of collapse, they had remained all the same. But in the end, Bond had never shown. Momose suggested leaving Shibuya immediately, something Ayase clearly took issue with.
グラジオール目覚めたの。他の黒騎士と合流しないと。
Right. Ayase asserted her feelings of urgency by tugging on Yua's hand, wanting to reach the rubble-laden heart of Shibuya as quickly as they could. In the end, Yua and Momose had no choice but to follow along. So wait, can you see their weapons? It was 7 a.m. Not even an hour had passed since the sky had first begun to brighten. There was not a single trace of the refreshing morning air. The utter mayhem that had been cloaked in darkness was slowly being exposed to the rising sun. And right now, the three girls found themselves in the midst of it. The city of Shibuya had been transformed into the very picture of hell itself. Roads were torn to oblivion. Asphalt protruded from the earth. A number of buildings had collapsed, their debris scattered in broken chunks along the sides of the road. Nearly every window that had been seen was broken, and a massive billboard had fallen from its usual perch atop a building's roof. One would not have to walk far to see countless corpses left undisturbed, littered among the chaos. For every body Momose witnessed, the same act played out inside her head, one in which she clasped her hands together in pity for their demise. But there were just far too many. It was only partway through that she could not take it anymore, realizing the only way to retain her sanity was to ignore them outright. The remaining people they would occasionally pass by had lost all expression, existing only to stagger aimlessly throughout the streets. A group of men had come together to try to help the survivors buried beneath the rubble, but it did not seem like there was much they could do without heavy lifting equipment. Momose took another glance at what Yua was holding in her hands. Oh, she could see it! A D-sword. Ayase had explained them to her. Much like magic, they were swords that could be taken out of thin air. What Bon had told her had been true. And yet Yua seemed only shocked and bewildered about possessing one for herself.
ねえ岸本さん。
Ayase, walking slightly ahead of the group, paid no attention to Momose's call. The expression on her face made it clear her patience was wearing thin.
このディソードを持つ人はあなたたちを含めて全部で7人いるっていうこと？
Let's see, that would mean Kozupi, Senna, Nanami, Takumi, and Rimi. Counting Ayase and Yua, that's 7.
そうよ。
他の人たちがどこにいるのかわかる
わからない。
の？だったら
感じるのよ。意志を。こっちで間違いないわ。
We should probably trust an Ayase here. Ayase was effectively a brick wall. With no other options left, Momose repeated the same words for what felt like the 1000th time.
今むやみに歩き回るのは危ないわ。ひとまず安全なところに避難するべきよ。
ダメよ。時間がないの。
もしかしたら他の黒騎士だったかしら。その人たちだって避難場所にいるかもしれないでしょ。
I like that Momose is legitimately trying to be this protective motherly role, but she's still kind of out of her element.
そうですよ、岸本さん。私も避難場所に行くべきだと。
Ayase suddenly came to a halt, as though Yua's backing had possibly made some sense to her. She narrowed her eyes, and then she looked beyond the rugged Dogenzaka roads that no car could traverse.
いたって何が
Oh, is there another person? Oh no. Nanami. At the end of Ayase's gaze was a lone girl walking away from the station. She was wearing a Sume Academy uniform, though it was far more tattered than either Ayase's or Yua's. And with only her left hand, she was holding an enormous cross-shaped sword to her chest. Her gait was markedly unsteady. It looked as though she could collapse at any moment.
大変
Momose's body jiggled as she ran toward the girl, toward Nishijo Nanami. The D-sword Nanami was carrying had caught her eye, but instead of prying in order to satiate her curiosity, she focused only on supporting the girl's petite frame.
大丈夫よく頑張ったわね今病院に連れて行ってあげるから気をしっかり持つのよ
Nanami's eyes responded in blank confusion to Momose's words of encouragement. Oh no.
なんて言ったの
Momose, get away. She was forcibly broken and now she's only focused on the fucking bangle. God damn it. Both Yua and Ayase belatedly ran up behind Momose.
この子、西条くんの妹さんです。そう。黒騎士の資格があるのもうなずける。匠の妹な。
二人ともこの子を運ぶのを手伝ってなんとか病院に連れて行かないと
Nanami groaned in pain.
右手
Momose inadvertently glanced toward Nanami's right hand, gasping in surprise when she did.
だってひどいこんな
Yua and Ayase were not able to grasp why Momose was so distraught. While the bandage over Nanami's right hand was indeed stained with blood, it did not seem to be that serious of an injury. However, in Momose's eyes, Nanami's hand had been severed from her bandaged wrist. Though medical measures had been taken, it was still an open wound. With a blank look on her face, Ayase attempted to grab Nanami's right hand, but her outstretched hand passed only through empty air. Like a holographic image, Nanami's fingers lacked any substance. A drop of blood trickled down from the red-stained bandage and fell onto Ayase's hand.
もうそう。
A delusional hand.
リミさんに助けてもらって。リミさんって崎畑リミさん。
Wait a minute, you... Wait.
知ってる
西条くんのお友達の。
Yua had always held the suspicion that Takumi was the true new-gen culprit, so she knew a fair amount about his background. This also extended to those that would frequently come into contact with him. Therefore, it was only natural for her to have conducted investigations on Nishijo Nanami and Saki Hatarimi. In contrast to Yua, Ayase abandoned her typical aloof expression, grimacing at the mere mention of Rimi's name. Oh yeah!
崎畑リミも一人の黒騎士の一人。そうなんですか
Ayase recalled yesterday's incident at the hospital. She could remember being addressed by Rimi's apologetic voice. Oh, we're gonna see that?
岸本さん。 タクに近づかないで。目覚めさせたくないの。君には自覚がないの。黒騎士の一人としての。私が一人で何とかするから。
Well, that explains why she slapped her.
とても美しいわ、その思いは。でもそれは大いなる意志の望むことじゃない。私も望んでいないわ。あなた一人に全てを背負わせるなんて。
Ah, that's how this went.
黒騎士云々の話は今は置いときましょう。とにかく早く病院に連れて行かないと血が止まらないわ。
Yeah? Momose gently placed her handkerchief on Nanami's open wound.
すごい熱だし顔色も悪い。急がないと。
お兄に会いたいよ。
Tears trickled from Nanami's vacant eyes. Right at that moment, something happened. In an instant, the highway they were standing on collapsed with a deafening roar. They were all lost their footing, helplessly entering free fall at gravity's mercy. To them, it was like they were falling into the deepest, darkest, lowest circle of hell. Losing herself in that illusion, Momose raised a scream so loud it betrayed her age entirely. When I came to, dark clouds covered the sky overhead. The dark night had come to an end before I knew it. Oh, shit. You gotta find your sister out there. You gotta find Mimosa. You gotta start looking! There wasn't a shred of blue sky in sight. I was hit with a wave of depression. The sky could not have been more gloomy. Countless sirens from ambulances and fire trucks blared off in the distance. A multitude of helicopters were in the sky, circling the city like flies. My head was racked with pain, like someone was putting a jackhammer to it. It felt even worse than after the last earthquake. I tried to remember what happened before my memories had cut off. The sky turning white, Shogun mentioning the third melt. I ignored my headache and stood up, only to lose all words. Jesus. The usual scenery was entirely absent. It was like a scene out of the end of the millennium thing that everyone had been freaking out about almost a decade ago. Oh my god, that was about... Oh shit. Shibuya was on the verge of collapse. Traffic lights, roadside trees, and buildings had all fallen to the ground. The Jumbotrons, the most iconic part of Scramble Crossing, really had cracks ripping through them, and were entirely silent. The stairs leading down to the subway were buried beneath the rubble of their own ceilings. The guard around the Yamanote line had fallen apart, and the railway had been ripped to shreds. More people than I could count were lying on the ground. Blood and guts clung to the scattered debris. Some remained motionless. Some moaned in pain. Some screamed for help. Some were covered in dust, crawling on all fours without a care as to how it made them appear. Some only cried, tightly cradling another motionless body in their arms. I could smell all the blood. The rusty smell mixed with the stench of something burning. Everything was covered with the thick odor of dust. Far in the distance, plumes of black smoke rose like smoke signals. This was the power of Noah 2. It was horrifying. This was already on the scale of a weapon of mass destruction. I now understood why Shogun wanted to put an end to this. Come to think of it, where was Shogun? When I came back to myself, I surveyed my surroundings. There was a bent wheelchair lying pretty close to me, and right beside it, his delicate frame was lying there. I ran over to him in a panic and lifted him up.
ねえ、おい、しっかりして。
He didn't react. Not even his inner voice said anything. Oh god. Was he dead? I put my ear to his mouth. As faint as it was, he was still breathing. But he was still unconscious. I tried hitting him lightly on the cheek a few times, but to no avail.
ノア2はどこにあるの？
If I didn't know where it was, there was no way I could make it in time to save Rimi or Nanami. I should have asked him that when I had the chance. Clicking my tongue, I took my phone out of my pocket. It was off, and despite my many attempts to get it working, it stayed that way. It was nothing more than garbage now. Aside from Shogun, who else would know where to find it? Think, goddammit! I didn't have time for this! While I was wandering around doing absolutely goddamn nothing, that Narose guy could be ready to kill Rimi at any moment. Then who? Who was someone I could trust? Someone who knew about Noah too.
君たちは特別な存在だ。中でも一番特別なのは、その目、誰の目を産み落とした少年。
畑野一世。
Yeah. Senna's dad. One of the founding members of Project Noah. The person who is nowhere to be found right now. Not to mention, I'd never met him before. Wait. It was possible we'd passed each other on the street before, actually. Yeah, I pointed him out a couple of times. Kozupi had told me all about his homeless lifestyle, with the guy always wandering around Shibuya.
見つけるしかない。
With the surprisingly light body of Shogun on my back, I mindfully made my way through the debris. I didn't have a clue as to where Hatano-san was, but I had no choice. I had to find him, no matter what. Oh, are we back here? Oh, no, never mind. Oh, wait, we are, but now it's with Takami's perspective. Oof. As light as Shogun's body was, it was still nearly 20 kilograms. It was hard enough just carrying him around Shibuya, but it was even worse factoring in all the uneven roads. I wasn't one for exercise. I mean, hell, my daily routine consisted of me just sitting in front of my computer all day. I considered finding a way to get Shogun to the hospital, but with Shibuya the way it was, I doubted I could even get an ambulance. I like this sense of realism, like, even though he awakened to his power, he's not Omega athletic right now. Like, it's still keeping in the details about his not active lifestyle. Even the gentle hill that was Dogonzaka was doing its best to drain all my energy. I could barely breathe and my whole body was gushing out buckets of sweat. Wiping the sweat off my forehead, I took a quick break to catch my breath. Ayase? Suddenly, I could faintly hear someone's voice. Someone was singing. Their voice rife with loneliness, but not without hope. Their soothing voice washed over me. I'd heard this singing somewhere before. Back at the concert. Even in spite of the glaring lights overwhelming my vision and the blaring sound shaking the entire airtight building, I'd still managed to take it in. But this time, I was in the middle of the road where I couldn't see a single sign of life. And yet, in the center of this collapsed city dominated by death, I could hear her. I put Shogun down and surveyed my surroundings once again. But the only people I could see were the collapsed corpses strewn across the city. I did my best to avoid looking at them, instead focusing on trying to find Ayase. Where the hell was her voice coming from? The road in front of me was wholly caved in. Looking at it, the hole it had created was incredibly big. There was definitely a subway tunnel beneath it. I didn't want to believe it at first, but even so, I peered down from the edge of the hole. It was about 5 meters deep. There was a pretty fair amount of rubble piled up at the bottom. And that was where Ayase had fallen. I jumped down into the hole. I didn't stick the landing whatsoever, instead basically slamming into the rubble while just barely avoiding falling over. Oh shit, her legs. Ugh. Ayase's leg was pinned under a pretty sizable slab of concrete, stopping her from moving. I really did give it my best effort, but moving it just wasn't possible on my own. Alright. What the hell was she doing here? Hadn't that Narose guy kidnapped her? Enduring the pain in my legs, I stood up and yelled out for my sister, but I got no reply. Looking around me, I only saw one other person beside Ayase. There was a pretty hefty woman lying face down on the ground, and while she wasn't moving, she only seemed to be unconscious. Nanami and one other person were absent. Maybe they've been buried alive. I had to find them, right this second! My eyes shot to the top of the hole. There was enough dust to make anyone hack their lungs out, but beyond that I could see the circular shape of the sky above. I thought about Shogun, who I'd laid on the road up there. I remembered what Rimi had told me. Shit. But I couldn't hesitate here. I drew my AD sword entirely from thin air. Consciously avoiding looking at her leg, I sat down near Ayase and peered at her face. I stared into her eyes, refusing to look at anything else. That should do the trick. A strong one. A really strong one. I love the, okay, I'm already liking, like, he is now actively taking, like, he is practically at using these delusions now. Me and Ayase. We only needed mutual recognition between us two gigalomaniacs, because once we had that, then our delusion was sure to become reality. Out of nowhere, Ayase smiled in relief. She gently stroked my cheek with her fingers. I think that's the happiest I've seen you. I blinked nervously. Exactly as I deluded it to be. The large slab of concrete pinning Ayase's leg had now turned into a heap of smaller pieces. Pushing away some of the debris, Ayase slipped her leg right out. I really hadn't expected that to go so damn well. Starting to move, she massaged her ankle. Luckily, her injuries didn't seem all that bad. Hey, it helped. Helping Ayase up, I stood up and took a look around.
ナナミは
I still didn't see any signs of my sister. Had my delusion failed after all, or was Nanami already? I began to feel anxious. Yua? I heard a voice. Looking in the direction of it, I saw a hand reaching out from a gap inside the rubble. And so I took that hand, gripped its slender fingers, and peered into the gap. Oh, hi.
Oh.
The gap was almost like a tunnel, and in that tunnel was a familiar-looking girl wearing glasses. It felt like it had been ages since I'd last seen Yua.
なぜか急にこの隙間ができて、ついさっきまで全く身動きが取れなかったんですけど。
The girl averted her eyes from me, with a face that seemed almost apologetic.
手をしっかり掴んでて。
And look at that, he's still trying to help her. I tightly gripped Yua's hand, and then I pulled as hard as I possibly could away from the gap. Ayase helped as well. With the two of us pulling Yua with all our might, she managed to break free from the rubble without too much trouble. Hey, you okay?
ありがとう。ござい。
She was covered from head to toe in dust. A few pieces of concrete were tangled up in her long hair. But even with all of that, Yua seemed completely uninjured. And now, Nanami. Leaving Yua with Ayase, I started to search for Nanami. Given Yua had managed to break free, I could only assume that my delusion had actually worked. And if that was true, then Nanami should have been in some rubble somewhere that I could yank her free from. And lo and behold, that was exactly the case. As I searched through tons and tons more rubble, I managed to catch a glimpse of Nanami's face through a crack in the debris.
ナナミ
I called to her, but she didn't respond. She must have fainted. Reaching out, I went to touch her shoulder, but hesitated. You were afraid that she's going to disappear again. A memory from yesterday flashed into my mind, of Nanami vanishing into particles right before my eyes. No! This has to be the real Nanami! Gathering my resolve, I grabbed her by the shoulder, or more specifically, by her blouse. I could actually touch her. I could feel her warmth. Just like I had with Yua a bit ago, I pulled her out with all my strength. Unlike Ayase or Yua, however, Nanami's uniform was stained with blood. Her hand especially was covered in red. Regardless, I laid her down on the ground, then went to check her breathing. She seemed to be in pain, but she was still breathing.
よかった。
Oh, that's a relief. Even so, I couldn't help but worry about her right hand. It was absolutely covered in blood, and yet when I tried to grab it, my fingers slipped right through it. Oh, because there's no mutual recognition right now. A delusional hand? Then that could only mean Nanami's right hand was...
ごめん。ごめん。巻き込んで。
A groan leaped from Nanami's mouth. Her face was caked in dust. I gently stroked her cheek and watched as her eyelids slowly began to open. Her gaze faintly wandered for a moment before finally landing on me.
ナナミ。
And at that very moment, Nanami's expression warped and changed. Tremendous tears broke free from her eyes. Her left hand firmly grasped my own. She whispered to me so happily. It felt as if she never wanted to let me go. But when I heard those whispers, I responded with a slight shake of my head.
ナナミの本当のお兄は僕じゃないよ。
あ
memories are so cloudy. Oh, this is hers. That was how Nishijo Nanami felt. Her brother's words had been the trigger in her heart, and now she felt as if she had two brothers. However, what her heart told her was that it was not just as if she had two, but that she really did have two. Her mind flashed back to the past, and she remembered her two brothers' faces. One of them seemed quite pathetic. One of them was covered in wrinkles. And yet, despite these distinctions, she was still convinced that she only had a single brother. Something was not adding up. Something between her memories and her cognition. What was reality? What was illusion? She did not know, and that scared her. To escape this, she attempted to empty her mind of all thoughts, when suddenly her own voice audibly rippled outward. Nana, you need to stay strong. The next thing she knew, she was standing in a hallway illuminated by the setting sun. She could smell disinfectant, and before her stood a rather plain door. She reached out toward it and took hold of the handle, and then, through no will of her own, her hand opened the door.
Ah, Oni, またご飯食べないつもり？ちゃんと食べてっていつも言ってるじゃん。出ないと元気になんないよ。あ、もしかしてグリーンピースが入ってるから？
This memory.
子供じゃないんだし、いい加減好き嫌いやめたら？そりゃナナだってグリーンピース嫌いだから残したくなる気持ちはわかるけど、ちゃんと食べてくんないとナナが怒られるんだからね。あの怖い看護師長さんに。
ナナミ。
何？
今まで辛く当たってごめん。
Oh.
お兄が謝るなんて珍しいじゃん。
もう僕のために無理をする必要はないんだ。
何言ってるの？
僕は身を隠さなくちゃならなくなった。
Oh.
だからお前はもうここには来なくていい。
何のつもり？
さようなら。
And then the delusional, and then that's when the delusion took place, and that was where her memories cut off. Those memories about her real brother. Her brother had been suffering from a serious illness, leading her to graciously spend many years tending to him in the hospital. No matter how much time had passed, she knew she had to stay strong so that she could best take care of him in his time of need. For the past year and a half, these things had disappeared from her memory entirely. She had forgotten that those memories had even existed. In exchange for that, her brother had continued living on his own in good health, right there in Shibuya. Her mother had asked her to routinely check in on him, leading her to sometimes drop by on the way home from school. And thus she had done so, thinking nothing of it. After all, he was her brother. Checking in on him might as well have already been routine. She had never housed any doubts about it.
どうしてナナは忘れちゃってたんだろう。
Nearly 30 minutes had passed since she had been rescued from beneath the rubble, and now she had finally been reunited with her real brother. There he was, lying still on the road. He was still breathing, but remained unconscious. His body was as small, wrinkled, emaciated, and incredibly weak as she remembered. It was the brother from so long ago whom she had always known.
こんなのひどいよ。
Way too fucking much.
ナナはお兄に文句ばっかり言ってたけど
Though her brother did not reply, she clung to his small body all the same, letting loose a flood of tears.
お兄のこと一度だって忘れたいなんて思ったことなかったのに。勝手だよ。わがまますぎだよ。
The sound of metal lightly scraping against something came from within her brother's clothes, and a moment later something slipped free from his pocket. The bangle. It was what Nanami had been searching for. When she lost her right hand, she lost it as well. A flimsy, cheap bangle with a snowflake motif. Confused, she stared at her real brother's face, but his eyes, buried in wrinkles, did not open in return. Nanami picked up the bangle with her left hand. She remembered how it felt to touch. It was her brother's first present to her. Nanami's greatest treasure. Nanami lifted her gaze, unconsciously searching for her other brother. He was holding a longsword and his back was turned to her. But he was walking away. He was leaving this place. Even without saying a word, Nanami could understand that much. The fact that he might leave without saying even a word to her left her wrought with a terrible loneliness.
行っておいで。
Oh. Nanami's brow furrowed in confusion, and she softly searched around herself.
今声が。
It was her brother's voice. That much she indeed remembered. The voice of her brother, who should have been unconscious.
彼は僕と一心同体。もう一人のお兄なんだから。
Whether it was truly her brother's voice or a mere hallucination, Nanami could not tell. And yet, regardless of which it was, she whispered all the same.
わかった。
She whispered to her brother, who still lay on the ground. Nanami stood up and walked toward her older brother's back. She hardly had any strength left. Day after day, she had been trapped in a pitch-black room, forced to take part in some sick tableau of agonizing crucifixion. She could not even remember how many times she had thought she would die. Her right hand in particular caused her tremendous amounts of pain, as if a chisel was being struck into it all the way to the bone. The sensation that she lacked her hand, together with the illusion that it still remained, were tearing her mind in two. She was exhausted, both mentally and physically. If she lost focus, there was no doubt she would fall to the ground, too drained to get back up again. Therefore, she had to make a desperate effort to reach her hand out at this very instant. Even if it took more effort than she could give, she would do everything in her power to make him stop.
待って。
She narrowly managed to squeeze something out, and thankfully he had heard. He halted his stride and looked back toward Nanami. Even though she had managed to stop him, she was lost on what exactly to say to him. The reality that this person was not her brother at all. The conviction that this person was her brother to the end. Those two feelings had blended together in her head, making them even harder to discern. But she gripped her bangle tightly in her left hand. It had been his gift to her, one that felt cold to the touch but warm to the heart. The very existence of this bangle linked both him and her together. That was how she felt. And that answer was all she needed. Her hesitation instantly faded.
お兄は本当のお兄じゃないかもしれないけど、頼りにならなくておたくさんでアニメキャラのお人形さんばっかり集めてて、口が悪くて愛想もなくて意地悪なことばっかり言うけど、お兄もナナのお兄だよ。
Trying her hardest to fight back her tears, Nanami smiled as best she could.
ありがとう、ナナミ。
Upon gazing at his expression, she saw that her other brother seemed a little embarrassed. And with that, relief washed over Nanami, before slowly putting her consciousness to rest. Nanami nearly collapsed, and I hurriedly went to catch her. She lost consciousness. Her face was pale and she was clearly having trouble breathing.
早く病院に運ばないと、このままじゃ危ないわ。
The hefty woman who had introduced herself as Momose peered at Nanami's face as she voiced her concern. Next, she turned to Shogun.
そっちに寝かせてる子もね。
I decided to leave Nanami in Momose-san's care.
二人を頼みます。あなたはどうする？
Kick ass and take names.
探さなくちゃいけない人がいて。
So I could learn the whereabouts of Noah. The know-abouts of Wera. I'm stupid. I had asked Nanami since she had been taken there when she was kidnapped, but she wasn't too sure of it herself. In the end, I had no choice but to find Hatano.
必要なことなのね。グラジオールを倒すために。
グラジオールか。
Replace that with Noah too, and...
そうだよ。
Ayase's expression stiffened. She took a single step toward me. By the way she slightly dragged her leg, I could tell she had genuinely been injured.
一緒に行くわ。私も。
Seriously?
その必要はないよ。
Even though I tried to tell her no, she only shook her head in refusal.
基地に集まらないと。
Not with Nanami's condition, she ain't joining.
綾瀬も、それに、イワも。畑野っていう人を探してほしい。
At the mere mention of her name, Yua jumped a little from her hiding spot behind Momose.
その人が、ノア2の場所を知ってるから。一緒に行動しなくても、僕はみんなの見聞きしたことがわかる。
Yeah, his delusional power lets him see their memories. He's good. As long as he gets that information, he's good to go.
だから、今は手分けして探して。
That was the best option we had at the moment, and we had to be quick about it. There was no guarantee we'd be safe if another earthquake struck.
わかった。
Ayase seemed to agree with me, though she didn't look all that happy about it.
なんだかよくわからないけど、
Listen, my D-Sword, I can connect with everybody. I'm good.
野呂瀬源一が全ての黒幕です。
Oh, right, she's got information. She might know.
そういうこと。それなら妹さんたちのことは私に任せなさいな。
I trust you, Momose. Momose-san puffed out her chest in a display of bravado, and then she gave me a quick nod, likely in an attempt to cheer me on.
ただし、無茶しちゃダメよ。
We'll see about that.
それと一つ頼まれてほしいんだけど。バンちゃん、ヘラヘラ笑ってるうさんくさそうな中年刑事を見たら、私に連絡するように伝えてくれる？
Oh. Did she mean Ban Yasuji? I knew all about how he had died. He had been shot and killed by his own partner. I had unconsciously seen it all unfold. I fully intended to tell Momose-san this, but...
まったく。あの人はこんな時にどこをほっつき歩いてるんだか。
Shit.
まあ、案外どこかで怪我人を助けてるのかもしれないけどね。
couldn't bring my... We can't... Yeah. Momose had to go and say something like that. And now I could no longer bring myself to tell her the truth.
というわけでよろしく。
Oh, it's gonna break her heart.
はい。
Without meaning to, I'd nodded, making a promise I'd never be able to keep. But that had been the only answer I could have ever thought to make.
西条くん。
Yua. With her head lowered, Yua spoke with a barely audible voice. For a good while now, she had been nervously taking peeks at me, which made me think she had something to say.
あなたのこと疑ってごめんなさい。私、西条くんを傷つけるようなこと言って。
The lenses of her glasses were covered in dust, and yet I knew very well that behind them, her eyes were wet with tears.
謝っても許してもらえるとは思ってないです。それでも謝らせてください。ごめんなさい。
She bowed her head deeply. I didn't reply. All I did was turn my back to her.
僕のベースにあるセーラのフィギュア。
はい。
よかったらもらってくれる？
Oh my god. The significance of this, my god. Back when she'd deceived me, I couldn't have been more shocked, but now I understood why she had done what she'd done. So it just felt wrong to say, I forgive you, or something along those lines. It was true that I'd always thought of her as my enemy, but I had no right to make her bow to me, nor any right to forgive her.
いいんですか？
もらってほしい。
はい。はい。
That seems like a very fitting dialogue for them.
また一緒にフィギュア買いに行きましょうね。
And with that, Yua put on the same gentle smile she'd had when we'd first met. I nodded to her in response. I exchanged looks with both Ayase and Momose-san. Then, I etched the image of Nanami and Shogun into my eyes one last time. And so I began walking alone among the mountains of rubble once again. Get rid of that picture. All right, I'll say it. I'll say it. This novel had a rough start. But I am so fucking happy I stuck with it.